What's going on? Welcome into Empty the Notebook. Evan Washburn alongside Aditi Kikabwala. It's Super Bowl week. Aditi, we made it. Super Bowl 59, 6 days away. It's a rematch, as we know, of Super Bowl 57. We've got the Chiefs and the Eagles. And we thought today's show, since neither of us had games yesterday and haven't been out on the road, there's a good chance to kind of run through our top storylines for this Super Bowl, kind of our top five, and see where we each think this game kind of falls in terms of the intrigue and some of the things to follow. But we have to, out of the gate, hit the big news of the day. It may be Super Bowl week, and the two top teams in the NFL, it was 3-14, and arguably their best player in Myles Garrett requesting a trade. Obviously just wrapped up his 8th season in Cleveland, last 7 double-digit sacks. He is a perennial Pro Bowler, All-Pro, reigning Defensive Player of the Year. There had been some conversations around this being something that was in the offering. Andrew Berry, general managers, had his comments in recent as well as anyone. So give us your thoughts, your reaction to this news, and maybe some of the things we need to know.
You know, Evan, I've known Myles since he was drafted, and I'll say that during the season, conversations that we had, this isn't as out of left field as you would think. Now, obviously, as you referenced, Andrew Berry has twice had to say, oh, the Browns have no intention of trading Myles Garrett, that their expectation is that he will go from Cleveland to Canton. The Browns have come out again today and said that there's nothing that changes that. But Myles kind of put the Browns on the clock in December when he said he wants to know what the plan is. I'll take you even further back to week 7 when we had the Browns. And I actually pulled up my notebook because that's what Empty the Notebook is, right? And Myles Garrett has been struggling with injuries all season, Evan. Both of his feet had problems, his Achilles, his thigh. He's had a reoccurring shoulder issue for several years. And I actually said to him that week, why? This team is 1-5 right now. Why not just get the surgery? And Garrett said, because I want to win. He said, this is my purpose until it's not. This is why it matters so much to me. At the same time, though, Evan, he was very, very honest about how frustrated he was with his teammates at the time. He said to me that he thought in some ways he'd think that his going out there in the condition that he was would inspire his teammates to some degree. And he was frustrated that it hadn't. He also talked a lot about the energy that he saw from his teammates. He made a point of this to our game crew, and we actually talked about it in this game, that he had pulled aside the offense. And he'd said, when you've had a bad series, you don't come over and do that exchange with your head hanging. The fact that Myles Garrett was so open during the year about how he didn't see a future for the Browns, how he felt frustration at the way that the Browns were playing, he was telegraphing this a little bit. And then I'll give you one other piece to this, Evan. Myles Garrett, obviously, is one of the biggest game wreckers in this game. You and I had talked about this when we were discussing my struggle with my Defensive Player of the Year vote. Every single general manager, personnel person, or offensive coach I spoke to said that Myles Garrett, number one, is the biggest game wrecker that they face. But I'd also said to you that I, like many other voters, felt odd making the Defensive Player of the Year a guy who played for a 3-win team. You better believe Myles Garrett is aware of that, Evan, and he's thinking not only about winning, as he said in this statement, but he's also thinking about his own legacy and how many more years he has left.
Yeah, so let's get into that a little bit because he's 29 years old. He just wrapped up his 8th season. He's under contract for 2 more seasons in Cleveland. Over the course of those 2 years, he's not guaranteed, but owed up to $40 million. If they were to trade him, the Browns would take on $36 million in cap charges. So this isn't as easy as to say, hey, this is a guy who's given us everything over the course of 8 seasons. We're an organization and a roster in transition with some serious question marks at the quarterback position. Let's do right by Myles and move on and see what we can get for him. A haul, you would imagine, because there are so many teams. Outside of quarterback, I would argue, and I think you're right there with me, left tackle and pass rusher are probably the most valuable positions in football, and he provides so much. But it just seems, at least at first brush here, Aditi, that it's going to be challenging to satisfy Myles and not do continued damage to this organization by trading him. So as much as the reaction is right now from fans, those of us in our position is, oh, okay, so Myles is moving on. What's a great fit? Could he go to Buffalo? They need pass rushers. Did the Eagles continue to work their magic and they bring in Myles Garrett and Howie Roseman does his thing? But the reality is there's a lot that needs to happen from a Cleveland side of things to even start. And that's why I don't think Andrew Berry's words are just sort of are worthless. There's the reality of moving on from Myles Garrett. It may be bad business in a lot of ways for the Browns, and that puts this into what could be an ugly situation if it heads into the summer training camp into the next season.
Okay, well, Evan, let's start with the first piece of what Myles Garrett is worth, because I've talked to several personnel people around the league this morning, and everybody is uniformly saying that he's probably worth 2 first-round picks, so multiple years of first-round picks, 2 second-day picks, and a player is just for optics, so throwing in a player or not is not really a piece of it, but you're talking about at least 2 first-round picks, at least 2 second, third, fourth, later round picks, and then you need a team that is going to have the cap space to be able to do a deal to lock him up for 4 or 5 years, because nobody is giving up that capital without being able to do a deal with him. But you raised a really important point here in saying that, look, even if the Browns do trade him, then they're going to have to stomach a huge cap charge to the tune of about $36 million. So that's whether the Browns now make a decision. Okay, are we in full rebuild? Does that mean that this year we are in essence in cap hell, but we get first round picks again, which we haven't had in a while, and we go ahead and we hit the rebuild looking at 2026? I'm not sure, from what I've been told, that the Browns right now are sitting here and saying, yes, that's exactly what they're ready to do, that this is their chance to hit reset. And then the other piece here I would warn you of is that Andrew Berry is not a person who generally has responded well to strong arming. So I don't know that this is just a negotiating ploy either from Myles Garrett to sit here and say, hey, I just want a new deal and I'm going to force your hand. Very interesting, a lot of drama. Did talk to a member of the organization this morning who basically said it's always something.
So well said, so true. And you also have to factor in Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, and Andrew Berry to some degree. They're working to be successful right now because they don't have a lot of equity built for a serious rebuild that would have them around. So this is just getting started. I'm sure we'll get into this over the course of the day here on HQ and CBS Sports Network. But when we come back, we are going to dive into Super Bowl 59 and some of our top storylines. Welcome back into Empty the Notebook. Evan and Aditi with you. So this show has been built on taking you inside the production meetings, on the sidelines, into our preparation and our reporting over the course of a season. Well, Super Bowl week's a little different. It's on Fox. It's not on CBS. As you can see, we're both at our respective homes, but that doesn't mean we're not involved in this Super Bowl. And we do have the view from how we would cover. What are the things that are top of mind for us? Storylines, if you will. So we thought it'd be fun to give our top 5. And these aren't into the nitty gritty, the granular matchups within the game, more so big picture topics. And Aditi, I think we're going to start at 1. So I'm going to give my big one, and there's no surprise here. It's what a three-peat would mean. Specifically, though, for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. I know Travis Kelce's been a part of all 3, Chris Jones, a number of guys on this roster and coaches on this roster. But when you're talking legacy, it's often quarterback and head coach. And we know, I don't know if they're chasing. Mahomes is definitely chasing Tom Brady. I'm not sure in what way Andy Reid is chasing Bill Belichick, but he's gotten there pretty quickly in terms of all-time wins. And now he's got a chance to get Super Bowl number 4, and it would be 3 in a row, something that duo never did. So while it's been the discussion point really all season, it to me is the number one storyline of this Super Bowl. If Mahomes and Andy Reid can win 3 in a row, have 4 now going into, for Andy Reid, his late 60s, and what you would hope would be at least another 4 to 6 years as head coach, and then Mahomes entering his 30s with 4 and ahead of the Tom Brady pace. And then with having done something within that run that neither Bill nor Tom did, I think there's nothing bigger than that as we head into this game.
And I think that that's the point that our own colleague Tracy Wolfson made in the immediate aftermath of the AFC Championship when people were talking about Chiefs fatigue. And she essentially said, take a step back and appreciate this moment that we're in. Because to your point, Evan, who knows if we'll ever see it again. But I love how you kind of dismiss Travis Kelce a little bit. I will say this.
I'll get to him later.
Okay, is that what it is? I would just say, having been around the Chiefs last year as you were, I think that we can't diminish the role that Travis Kelce plays, even if in some ways it's kind of the joker or the jester to the court. And I'll tell you, I love how last year Kadarius Toney told me, and then a bunch of teammates affirmed it, that when Patrick Mahomes needs a bad guy, when he needs somebody to go play bad cop, it's Travis that he sends off to go do it. And then I remember Trent McDuffie telling me when someone needs to put Andy Reid in a good mood, well, they send his favorite to him. And that is Travis Kelce. And I think that that's the piece of this team. We can talk about Steve Spagnuolo's defense and how you have to be so smart to play in this defense. And after several years, it's really come together. We can talk about Chris Jones up front. We can talk about Andy Reid's magic and the way that he has gotten the most out of Patrick Mahomes. But there's a chemistry here. There's a leadership here. And there's a player-led leadership that I think really speaks to why this team never has a Super Bowl hangover. I mean, look at the 49ers. They go to the Super Bowl and then they don't make the playoffs the next year. And that's happened twice now. So you really have to credit the way the Chiefs are able to come back after having been on the top and still be hungry to stay on top.
The perfect way to frame it. And the phrase that comes up, and this is something that I would credit, and I don't know if he was the first person to say it, but it kind of brings this all together, was Tom Brady saying, to do what they've done and then what the Chiefs are trying to do, you have to have incredible competitive stamina. And that's what we've seen from Kansas City over the course of not just this 3-season run, but if you go back to the last 4 or 5, as they include the Super Bowl win over San Francisco to get this whole thing going. All right, storyline number 2 for me, flip sides, and let's go to Philadelphia and what a win would do for the perception of Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, Aditi, is one of the more unique characters at the quarterback position in our modern NFL. And it goes back to his story at Alabama, being benched for Tua, going to Oklahoma, going on that run in Oklahoma, being a second-round pick when Carson Wentz was under center. And then in what really feels like an extremely short period of time, he's making his second Super Bowl appearance and has an opportunity to win one at a really early portion of his career, just 26 years old. But then on the flip side, all season, there's just been this surrounding doubt around him and his performance. I mean, the reality is this team turned things around after the bye week in week 4 when they kept the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands as a thrower for the most part. The attempts went down. The rush attempts went up. Now he's a big part of that running game. I love that he's doing it differently, and he's a different story. I don't like the homogenized feel sometimes at the quarterback position where everybody looks and plays the same. And Jalen Hurts, if he wins a Super Bowl, Nick Foles has got a statue outside that stadium. If he wins one at his point in his career with what's still left on his contract, he'll still have doubters. That's not going away. But I think it would be I honestly think this Super Bowl means more to Jalen Hurts than anyone else on this field. So that's why he's my number 2 storyline for this one.
Evan, it's so funny, right? Because 2 years ago when he was in that Super Bowl, we're talking about him as a potential MVP candidate. And this is about these 2 quarterbacks duking it out. And then, as you said, all of a sudden, it's like the perception of him has plummeted. And he's having to say, well, I finally got out of my straitjacket after that NFC Championship game. But here's the magic of Jalen Hurts. He had 4 different offensive coordinators in college. I still remember when we had a meeting with him 2 years ago, and he'd had Shane Steichen for a second consecutive year. And I said, what is it about Steichen that stands out to you, considering all the previous coordinators? And he said, just that he's the same guy. He hadn't had the same play caller for 2 consecutive years since his dad was his coach in high school. Jalen Hurts is just a guy that really goes with whatever punches are thrown his way. And when he tells you that he doesn't care about the stats, as he did after that NFC title game, all he cares about the wins, or all he cares about are the wins, believe him. Those aren't just words. And I truly think that he is mature and smart enough to say if riding Saquon is the way that we win, then riding Saquon is the way that we win, because at the end of the day, I still get that Super Bowl ring. I don't feel I should say it this way, Evan, I feel that there is something very notable in that, especially in this day and age, when we see so many players that feel as if their legacy is so tied to what they themselves get. I mean, wasn't Cam Newton just talking about that last week? I don't know if that was a pregnant pause right there, if we froze, but of course it was Cam Newton who last week said that his Super Bowl his MVP mattered more to him than a Super Bowl trophy would have, because the MVP indicated that he had done his job. And I am saying that in all my time with Jalen Hurts, I don't feel that he is espousing that. And Evan, I feel that there is something that should be celebrated in his willingness to play in whatever way he needs to play to get his team ahead, even if that is simply handing the ball off. And since I'm mentioning the play callers, it looks like he may be in line for yet another play caller next year, with Kellen Moore apparently the hot bet to go to New Orleans.
So, Aditi, I froze up there, so thanks for carrying us. Have you hit your second big storyline for this Super Bowl?
You know what? I was still talking about yours right there, and now I'm so thrown. So we talked about the triumvirate. I'm saying the triumvirate. You're saying the twosome in Kansas City. We're talking about Jalen Hurts. I think another piece to this is maybe Howie Roseman. As Chip Kelly gets back into the league, you remember there was a bit of a power struggle, and Howie Roseman, the Eagles general manager, kind of had to take a back seat. He survived, and these Eagles are absolutely a testament to his central tenets, which are, number one, build from the line of scrimmage out, and number two, that he believes in the strength of a strong player-led locker room. You look at a young man like Jalen Carter, I don't know that he has the same success anywhere else, but the Eagles felt confident drafting him after some questions during his college career, because they knew the strength of veteran leadership that they had. And look at what Jalen Carter has turned into. As we talk about Myles Garrett, Carter is also one of the great game wreckers in the game.
All right, we'll wrap up our Super Bowl storylines coming up here after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back into Empty the Notebook. Before we close out this preview of the Super Bowl edition of the show, we've got to give our final few storylines that we think are at least worth a discussion and lead up to this game. And one that has me intrigued, Aditi, is what Saquon Barkley has the opportunity to do this season after really what was an historic run through not just the regular season, but the first 3 games of these playoffs. And it's been presented, and I really find it to be a nice parallel to what Terrell Davis did in the late 90s. It was a short career for Terrell Davis, only 7 seasons, but he won back-to-back Super Bowls. He was a Super Bowl MVP, his first in 97, and that was enough to get Terrell Davis into the Hall of Fame. And I think there's a version of events where Saquon can really build that Hall of Fame resume with a performance on Sunday. And if he's to win, or there to win this game, and he wins Super Bowl MVP, I like the way it lines up for him. Not that he's going to maybe end his career as early as Terrell Davis. You hope he stays healthy, but he needs this. It would be a really important part of a resume that, while has its moments over the course of the first few seasons with the New York Giants, has been nothing like this. And I think as we know, these resumes are often built on the biggest stages.
He's another one that I think that if you ask him, that trophy, the Super Bowl MVP trophy, doesn't matter nearly as much to him as the Super Bowl trophy. We saw it.
Well, the funny thing is they come together. You don't win the MVP if you don't win the big one. So
they do,
he doesn't have to worry about that.
I think he'd be okay if Jalen Hurts got the MVP trophy in the game. I just think we've seen his unselfishness. We've seen him tell Nick Sirianni, let the young guys eat, the fact that he hasn't chased individual records. But you're right. What a tremendous story in so many ways. And we were talking about Howie Roseman. This obviously was the signing of the season. And he's a young man. Saquon Barkley is a young man who is easy to root for sure. And you've drawn a great parallel.
All right, last two quickly here. Travis Kelce. Where do you come down on the idea this is a storyline that if they were to win this game, he walks off like John Elway and Ray Lewis?
I hope not. I think it's very, very possible. And I think that there is something to be said for leaving on top. And let's not forget Jerome Bettis, and let's not also forget Michael Strahan. But I do think that it would be fun to still have Travis Kelce in the game.
Yeah, he can come back and they'll win it again next year. How's that sound? Last one, and not to end on a sour note, but I really hope that officiating isn't an issue in this game. I respect what officials do. It's been a rough run for them going back to last week in the AFC Championship game and all the discussion around that. And then the last time these two teams met and James Bradbury got called for a hold on Juju Smith-Schuster, that really defined that game in a lot of ways. So I'm just hopeful that they have a great evening, but we're not talking about them come Monday.
I will 100% second that one. I hope I'm not texting you at any point during the game about officiating.
No doubt. Well, Aditi, it was a fun season. We might have some special episodes for free agency or the draft, but if you've missed any of the previous episodes or want to catch up, head to the NFL on CBS YouTube channel. That'll do it for us. Enjoy Super Bowl.